Then the voice broke the silence. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Arise, Joshua, and lead these people across the Jordan." This was no gentle request, but a divine command to push an untrained generation into a lethal land armed with nothing but faith. Summon your strength. Be brave. Do not stray from the law, neither to the right nor to the left. I will be with you wherever you step. Now, bearing the heavy weight of leadership, Joshua must march into absolute chaos. Behind him lies a nation paralyzed by fear. Ahead stand ancient colossal walls that no army has ever breached. Above him, an echo impossible to ignore. Prepare yourselves. In 3 days, we cross a deep river that parts without wind. 6 days of silent marching around Jericho. On the 7th, the horns scream. Yet not every victory is won by faith alone. A single soul secretes forbidden plunder his private greed, cursing the entire camp. Israel has broken faith. I will abandon you until this corruption is purged. Now, as the dark forces gather, trust crumbles into illusion. Strangers deceive them with tattered rags and moldy bread. Joshua faces the ultimate test of discernment and mercy. The sun freezes over Gibeon, and the moon stops above Ajalon. Time holds its breath for an entire day. This is no mere border war. It is the clash of absolute justice against the fragile nature of man. As the inheritance is mapped out, every stone remembers. Every step forward echoes with a single haunting question. When you finally possess the promise, will your heart still choose obedience? Music. Once Moses had passed, the Creator spoke to Joshua the son of Nun, who had long served him. The divine voice spoke, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Arise now and lead all these people across the Jordan into the land I am giving them. Every patch of ground your foot touches will be yours, exactly as I promised to Moses. Your borders shall stretch from the wild desert to Lebanon, and from the Euphrates River to the vast western sea. No adversary will stand against you all your days. Just as I stood with Moses, I will remain with you. I will never fail or abandon you. Be strong and resolute, for you are the one destined to divide the heritage I swore to their ancient fathers. Be fierce and incredibly brave. Hold fast to the entire law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not stray from it to the right or left, so you may triumph in all you do. Let this sacred scroll never leave your lips. Ponder its depths, day and night, ensuring you walk exactly as it prescribes. Only then will your path be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be bold and courageous. Banish all fear and dismay, for your Creator is beside you wherever your path leads." Joshua then charged the camp officers. "Move through the tents and command everyone to prepare their essential supplies. Within 3 days you will cross these waters to conquer and claim the inheritance that your God is giving you for your own." To the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua declared, "Recall the strict charge given by Moses, the servant of the divine. Your God is granting you rest and has allocated this territory. Your wives, your children, and your herds may dwell here in the land Moses assigned you east of the Jordan. But your warriors must cross over fully armed, marching ahead of your brothers. You must assist them until the Creator provides them with security, just as He did for you, and until they have firmly seized the territory that your God is delivering into their hands. Only after that may you return to settle and occupy your own territory, which Moses gave you on the eastern side of the Jordan." They answered Joshua, "We will do everything you have commanded, and wherever you send us, we will journey. Just as we followed Moses in all things, we will follow you. May the divine walk with you, just as he stood beside Moses. Anyone who rebels against your voice and refuses to obey your word will face death. Only summon your courage and be strong." From Shittim, Joshua secretly dispatched 2 scouts instructing them to survey the terrain, focusing especially on Jericho. They slipped into the city and found refuge in the home of a prostitute named Rahab, staying there for shelter. Word quickly reached the king of Jericho. "Foreigners have infiltrated our borders tonight to spy on us." The king immediately sent a command to Rahab, demanding she surrender the foreigners who had entered her dwelling. "They are sent to search out our country." But Rahab had already concealed them, replying, Yes, some travelers arrived, but I had no idea where they came from. At dusk, just as the city gates were closing, they slipped away. I do not know which way they headed. Pursue them quickly, and you may still overtake them. In truth, she had guided them to the flat roof, hiding them beneath stalks of flax laid out to dry. The king's guards rushed out, chasing the illusion toward the river crossings. Why, the moment they left, did the city gates slam shut. Before the spies slept, Rahab climbed to the roof, whispering, "I know your God has given you this land. Terrifying fear has paralyzed our hearts. Absolute dread has gripped us. We heard how your Lord dried up the Red Sea when you escaped Egypt. We heard of the kings you crushed east of the Jordan, how you completely dismantled their ancient power. Our hearts melted at the news. No one has the spirit to resist, for your God is master of both cosmic heights and earthly depths. Now swear a sacred oath by your Lord. Promise to show mercy to my family just as I have protected you. Give me a tangible sign of salvation for my parents, my brothers, and my sisters. Preserve all we own and rescue us from impending death." The spies replied, "Our very lives for yours. Keep our secret, and we will protect you with our own flesh. When the Creator delivers this land, we will treat you with absolute grace and loyalty." She lowered them with a cord through her window. Living in the wall, she occupied the boundary between ruin and survival. She urged them, "Flee to the rugged hills to escape the hunters. Hide there for 3 days, then continue your journey in safety." The men declared, "We will faithfully honor this solemn oath you made us swear. But when we enter this land, you must tie this crimson cord in the window that saved us. Gather your parents, siblings, and entire family inside your home. If anyone steps outside into the chaos, their blood is on their own head. We are entirely blameless, but if a hand is laid on anyone inside, we will pay with our lives. Yet if you betray our secret, we are completely freed from this oath." "Let it be so," she agreed. She watched them vanish into the dark, then tied the crimson rope in her window. The men hid in the silent hills for 3 days. Though the hunters searched every canyon, they found absolutely nothing. At last, the 2 scouts turned back. Descending the mountains, they crossed the rushing river and returned to Joshua. They reported every detail of their journey, saying, "The divine has surely delivered this entire territory into our hands." Every soul there is paralyzed with fear. At dawn, Joshua and the entire congregation of Israel marched toward the Jordan River. They camped near the rushing water, waiting. After 3 days of silence, the officers moved through the ranks with orders. "When you see the priests lifting the sacred Ark of the Covenant, you must rise and follow it. It will guide you through uncharted territory, for you have never walked this path. But maintain a distance of half a mile. Do not crowd the sacred chest." Joshua commanded the crowd, "Purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will perform wonders among you." Joshua then ordered the priests, "Lift up the Ark of the Covenant and lead the people forward." So they lifted the heavy chest and marched out in front. The Creator told Joshua, "Today I will begin to elevate you in the eyes of Israel, proving I am with you, just as I was with Moses. Command the priests carrying the covenant, when you reach the river's edge, step directly into the flood and stand still." Joshua called to the tribes, "Draw near and listen to the word. This is how you will know the living presence is moving among us, and that he will completely clear away the ancient forces that block your progress, the powers of this world. Look, the covenant ark of the Lord of all creation goes before you into the Jordan. Now select 12 representatives from the tribes of Israel, 1 from each bloodline." The moment the feet of the priests carrying the ark of the Lord, the ruler of all the earth, touch the Jordan, the rushing river will halt, rising up in a massive heap. When the nation broke camp to face the Jordan, the priests carrying the covenant ark marched right at the front. During the harvest season, the Jordan always swelled violently past its banks. Yet the instant the feet of the priests touched the cold water's edge, the raging torrent upstream froze in its tracks. Miles away near the town of Adam, the waters rose in an invisible wall, completely severing the flow toward the Dead Sea. The people crossed over directly facing Jericho. The priests bearing the sacred covenant ark stood on bone-dry ground in the middle of the riverbed holding back the flood, while the entire nation of Israel completed their crossing. Once the last traveler had safely crossed the dry Jordan, God instructed Joshua, Select 12 men, one representing each tribe. Command them to gather 12 heavy stones from the very center of the Jordan riverbed, right where the priests are standing. Carry these relics with you and deposit them where you build your camp tonight. Joshua summoned the 12 chosen men he had selected from the Israelites, one representing each tribe, and commanded, "Go back into the center of the Jordan right before the ark of your God. Each of you must hoist a heavy stone on your shoulder, one for every tribe, to serve as an enduring monument of your internal transformation." What if the heavy stones of your past are actually signposts for your future? When your children ask what they mean, tell them how the rushing waters finally stopped before the sacred presence. When the sacred ark crossed over, the deep waters parted. These monuments stand as a permanent map for the wandering soul. And the people obeyed just as Joshua directed. They gathered 12 heavy stones from the dry riverbed, one for each of the 12 tribes obeying the ancient command. They carried the heavy burdens to their camp and laid them down. Joshua placed 12 more stones right in the middle of the river, marking the exact spot where the priests once stood keeping their watch. The silent keepers of the ark stood motionless in the riverbed, waiting until the final soul had crossed, fulfilling the ancient promise handed down to them. They hurried across the dry riverbed. Once the entire crowd reached the safety of the shore, the sacred chest and its keepers emerged, watched by thousands of anxious eyes. The first warriors of Reuben, along with Gad and Manasseh, marched ahead armed for the coming war, just as their old leader had instructed. Nearly 40,000 armed men marched out onto the dusty plains of Jericho, ready to face their demons. On that fateful day, Joshua rose in stature before the eyes of the people, earning a deep reverence that would last a lifetime, matching the respect they once held for Moses. Then the silent voice spoke, telling Joshua to call the priests out of the depths. So Joshua called out, ordering them to step up from the riverbed, and the keepers of the covenant slowly emerged from the deep channel, carrying their sacred burden. The moment their feet touched the safe, dry shore, the massive waters collapsed back into their channel, roaring and flooding just as before. On the 10th day of the first month, the weary travelers made camp at Gilgal, right on the eastern edge of Jericho. There Joshua arranged the 12 stones they had carried out of the parted waters. He told them, "When your descendants look at this monument and ask what it means, remind them of how you crossed over on dry ground. Remind them that the divine dried up this river right before your eyes, just as was done to the Red Sea years ago, clearing a path through your deepest fears, until everyone had safely crossed over. This was done so the entire world would witness the quiet strength of the unseen, and so you would live with a profound sense of wonder and awe." When the local rulers, ruling the lands west of the river and along the distant seacoast, heard how the massive waters had been dried up to let these wanderers pass safely, their hearts completely melted. Panic consumed them, leaving them without the courage to stand and fight. In that tense silence, the command came, "Make sharp stone knives and perform the sacred cut of covenant again." So he crafted the stone knives, initiating the men at the Hill of Foreskins, renewing an ancient bond that had been broken. For the older generation, those who had fled Egypt ready for war, had all perished during the decades of wandering. The escapees from slavery carried the mark, but those born in the harsh wilderness along the way had never received it. They had wandered aimlessly for 40 years, waiting for that rebellious generation to pass away because they refused to trust the deeper calling. They were banned from entering the rich land of abundance and sweetness promised to their ancestors, destined to die in the dust. Instead, a new generation rose up in their place. These were the sons who were now marked, carrying the physical sign of a transformation delayed by years of wandering. With the rite completed, the entire camp waited in quiet vulnerability, letting their deep wounds heal. Then the quiet voice whispered, "Today I have rolled away the shame of your old slavery." They named that sanctuary Gilgal. On the evening of the 14th day, surrounded by the shadows of Jericho, they sat down to remember their deliverance. And on the very next morning, they tasted the fresh food of their new home, flatbread and roasted grain. Instantly, the mysterious daily bread from heaven ceased. The era of effortless survival was over. They had to cultivate the soil of their new reality. While walking near the towering walls of his fears, Joshua looked up to find a mysterious warrior blocking his path, sword drawn. Joshua approached the stranger, demanding to know whose side he was on. Neither the figure replied. "I am the commander of a higher army. Now I am here." Joshua immediately fell to the cold earth in deep reverence, asking what message this cosmic authority had for his searching soul. The warrior answered, "Remove your sandals, for the ground beneath you is sacred. This is your moment of absolute truth." And Joshua complied. Nearby, the massive gates of the fortress were bolted shut, sealed by the paralyzing fear of change. Nothing moved inside or out. Yet the quiet inner voice whispered to him, "See, I have already given you this fortress, its ruler, and all its power. Now circle your fears once a day for 6 days. Let your entire strength quietly surround what terrifies you." Why must 7 priests carry ram's horn trumpets before the mysterious Ark of the Covenant? On the 7th day, they must circle the stone city 7 times as the horns blare. When a single prolonged blast echoes through the air, command the crowd to shout. In that moment of collective noise, the giant walls will crumble, opening a direct path inside. So Joshua, carrying the weight of destiny, gathered the priests and ordered them to lift the sacred covenant. Position 7 priests with ram horns at the front. Then command the massive crowd to begin their march. Let the armed warriors lead the way before the sacred chest. Once the command was given, the 7 priests advanced into the divine presence, their horns blaring. Behind them, the golden ark trailed slowly through the dust. The vanguard led the procession before the trumpeters, while the rear guard watched the flank behind the ark. Through the heavy silence, only the horns cried out. Joshua had strictly ordered the crowd to stay quiet. "Do not utter a single word until the day I command you to scream." So they carried the divine chest around the city once. Returning to camp, they rested in the dark. At dawn, Joshua rose, and the priests lifted the heavy sacred vessel once more. The 7 trumpeters pushed forward their continuous blare, echoing, flanked by armed soldiers in front and a quiet rearguard keeping watch behind. The horns never stopped crying. They repeated this quiet, agonizing ritual for 6 full days. But on the 7th morning, they rose at the break of dawn and circled the fortress 7 times in the exact same manner. It was the only day they made that grueling 7-lap journey. And on that final loop, as the horns reached their peak, Joshua yelled to the crowd, "Cry out, for the divine power has delivered this city to you." This entire city and its treasures must be dedicated completely to the divine. Spare only Rahab the outcast and those under her roof, for she shielded our scouts. But you must not touch the sacred things reserved for the divine. Stealing these sacred items will bring a devastating curse upon our entire community. Every ounce of gold, silver, bronze, and iron belongs to the divine treasury. Then, as the horns blared, the massive crowd unleashed their roar. Under the sheer weight of that sound, the ancient stone walls crumbled. The army charged straight ahead, conquering the fortress. They wiped out everything within those walls, young and old, men and women, even the livestock. Everything perished by the sword. Amid the ruins, Joshua turned to the 2 men who had scouted the territory. "Go to the house of the outcast woman. Bring her and her family out safely, keeping the promise you made." The young scouts entered the burning chaos, rescuing Rahab, her parents, her siblings, and everyone who sheltered under her protection. They escorted her entire family to a secure area outside the main camp. Then they set the rest of the conquered city ablaze. Yet they saved the gold, silver, bronze, and iron for the sacred treasury. Joshua spared only Rahab the woman from the margins, along with her household, because she had sheltered the secret agents sent to investigate the city of Jericho. Her descendants remain woven into this community even now. Back then, Joshua uttered a dark, solemn warning. "Cursed be anyone who attempts to rebuild this ruined fortress. Laying its foundation will cost him his oldest son, and raising its gates will claim his youngest." The divine presence walked with Joshua, and whispers of his name echoed across the region. Yet human greed soon fractured their loyalty. The sacred command was quietly violated. A man named Achan from the tribe of Judah secretly stole some of the forbidden treasures. Because of this hidden shadow, the divine anger burned against the nation. Unaware of the betrayal, Joshua sent scouts from Jericho to Ai, a small town near Bethel, telling them to survey the landscape. They surveyed Ai and returned with confident reports. They told Joshua, "We do not need the whole army. Just 2,000 or 3,000 men can easily conquer this tiny outpost." 3,000 soldiers marched up with easy confidence. But the warriors of Ai utterly crushed them. The defenders chased them down the steep slopes, killing about 36 men. Suddenly, the hearts of the once proud Israelites melted like wax filled with absolute terror. In utter despair, Joshua tore his robes and collapsed face down in the dust before the sacred ark. He lay there weeping until darkness fell alongside the older leaders who threw ashes upon their heads. Joshua cried out, "Divine Creator, why lead us across the Jordan only to deliver us to our enemies? It would have been better to remain in the wilderness. What hope is left now that our people have turned their backs and fled in shame? When the local nations hear of this vulnerability, they will surround and destroy us. How will you protect the legacy of your sacred name then?" A voice answered, "Stand up. Why do you lie in the dirt? Your people have committed a betrayal. They broke our sacred agreement, secretly hoarding the very things meant to be left behind. They lied, hiding the forbidden cargo among their belongings. That is why they can no longer stand before their enemies. Why do they flee in terror before their enemies? Because a hidden rot has cursed them. I will not walk with you until you destroy what was meant to die. Stand up and command the soul to purify your inner temple. Tell them tomorrow we face the shadows. You harbor secrets that will destroy you. You will never withstand external battles until you purge the poison within. At dawn, bring your hidden parts into the light, tribe by tribe, until the shadow of guilt narrows down, from tribe to clan, from clan to family, until you are stripped of all defense, standing completely exposed before your own conscience. The one harboring the forbidden poison will be consumed by fire, along with every illusion he tried to hoard. He shattered the sacred bond and brought ruin upon the collective. As dawn broke, Joshua gathered the tribes, watching their faces in the dim light. The lot fell upon Judah. Joshua called that great tribe to step forward into the light. The circle closed on the Zerahites, then on the household of Zabdi, each step bringing them closer to the hidden truth. Man by man they walked, until Achan, son of Ki, was cornered. Joshua looked at him with heavy eyes and said, "Give honor to truth, my son. Speak now, conceal nothing." Achan looked down and whispered, "It is true. I have betrayed the sacred law of Israel. This is the heavy shadow I carried. I saw a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels. I lusted, I took, and I buried them inside my tent." Runners raced to his tent, digging into the earth where they found the treasure exactly as he had hidden it. They dragged the stolen desire into the open, laying it bare before the eyes of the entire community. They exposed the hoard before the divine gaze. Then they took Achan the silver, the robe, the gold, along with his children, his livestock, and everything he owned, dragging them all down to the desolate valley of Aore. Joshua said, "Why did you bring ruin upon us? Today that very ruin falls back on your own soul." The crowd stoned him to death, burning his remains and raising a massive monument of rocks over him, a stark warning that stands to this day. Only then did the divine fury quiet. Since that moment, this grim place has been named the Valley of Achor, a monument of trouble. But then the voice whispered to Joshua, "Do not fear or be discouraged. Gather your entire army and march against the fortress of Ai. I have delivered its king, its people, and its lands into your grasp. Deal with Ai and its ruler, just as you shattered Jericho. Only this time, you may keep the spoils and the livestock. Now lay a hidden trap behind the city walls." Joshua rallied his forces to march on Ai. He selected 30,000 elite battle-hardened soldiers and sent them slipping into the shadows of the night. His orders were clear. Lie in wait behind the walls. Stay close, stay hidden, and be ready to strike. My main force will advance openly. When their defenders rush out to fight us as they did before, we will pretend to flee. They will pursue us blindly, lured away from their defenses. That is your moment to rise from hiding and seize the empty city. Your God will deliver it into your hands. Once you occupy the gates, set the entire place ablaze. Obey these sacred commands. Go now. Joshua sent them to wait in absolute silence between Bethel and Ai, crouching in the darkness just to the west of the city. But Joshua spent that long, quiet night in camp with the remaining troops. At the first light of dawn, Joshua rallied the ranks. Accompanied by the nation's elders, the main army marched forward, halting just before the city gates. They pitched their tents on the northern side, a deep ravine separating them from the enemy. He then positioned a second strike force of 5,000 men to the west, hiding them between Bethel and Ai. With his main army to the north and the trap set to the west, Joshua slipped down into the dark valley floor. At sunrise, the king of Ai saw the movements. He scrambled his entire army, rushing out to confront Israel on the slopes overlooking the plains. He was completely blind to the trap waiting behind him. Joshua and his forces feigned panic, retreating in apparent defeat. They fled toward the barren wilderness, drawing the defenders out in a wild chase, completely emptying the fortress of its protection. Not a single defender remained in Ai or Bethel. Every man had joined the pursuit, leaving their gates wide open and vulnerable. Then the silent voice spoke. "Point your javelin toward Ai, for I am handing the entire city over to you now." Joshua raised his weapon high toward the skyline. Instantly, the hidden soldiers burst from their cover and charged through the undefended gates. They seized the fortress and immediately set it ablaze. When the defenders glanced back, thick columns of black smoke filled the sky. Trapped with no escape route, their morale shattered. Suddenly, the retreating Israelites spun around, turning their flight into a brutal counterattack. Seeing the smoke rising and knowing the trap had sprung, Joshua and his forces wheeled around, launching a devastating assault on the confused enemy. The ambush party poured out of the burning city, trapping the defenders in a deadly pincer movement with no way out. They crushed the enemy, capturing their king alive. Once we purge our inner rot, victory is absolute. What drives us to destroy our enemies completely, just as Israel slaughtered the men of Ai in those barren fields? When every last soldier fell by the blade, the army marched back to Ai to eliminate every remaining soul left behind. 12,000 souls perished that day. Every citizen of Ai, as Joshua held his spear high, until they were completely wiped out. Yet the victors claimed the livestock and plunder for themselves, obeying the command given to Joshua by the divine. Joshua reduced the city of Ai to ashes, leaving it a silent mound of ruin, a wasteland that remains today. The captured king was hanged from a tree until dusk, when Joshua ordered his body cast down at the broken city gates. They heaped a mountain of stone over his corpse, marking the spot forever. High on Mount Ebal, Joshua raised an altar to the Creator, fulfilling the ancient command Moses had left for the people. He built it with raw, untouched stones, as the law required, sending up smoke from sacrifices and peace offerings to the Lord. There, in full view of the crowd, Joshua carved the sacred laws onto the stone. Every soul in Israel, both foreigners and natives, elders, officers, and judges, stood on either side of the ark, borne by priests. One half faced Mount Gerizim, while the other stood before Mount Ebal, just as Moses had commanded to bless the nation. Then Joshua recited every single word of the law, detailing both the blessings and the terrible curses written in the book. Not a word was skipped as he spoke to the assembly, ensuring that women, children, and the strangers among them heard it all. But as word of this conquest spread to the kings west of the Jordan, ruling the rugged hills and western valleys, stretching along the great sea up to Lebanon, including the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, and Hivites, a shadow fell, and the Jebusites, they united their armies to crush Joshua and his forces. But when the clever people of Gibeon heard of Jericho and Ai's destruction, they chose strategy over warcrafting, a brilliant deception. They loaded their beasts with worn-out sacks, carried cracked, patched wineskins, and strapped tattered sandals onto their feet. Dressed in threadbare rags, they carried nothing but dry, moldy bread. Entering Joshua's camp at Gilgal, they announced to Israel, "We have journeyed from a very distant land. Please make a treaty with us." But the skeptical Israelites questioned these Hivites. "How can we be sure you do not live nearby? We cannot make a treaty if you are neighbors." They bowed to Joshua, saying, "We are your servants." But Joshua pressed them, "Who are you really? And where do you come from?" They replied, "We come from a land far beyond your borders, drawn here by the sheer fame of your God. We heard of his deeds in Egypt, and how he crushed the Amorite kings across the Jordan, Sihon of Heshbon, and Og of Bashan and Ashtaroth. Our elders and citizens instructed us pack food for a long journey. Go to them and offer your alliance. Tell them we are their servants and ask for peace. Look at this bread. It was warm from the oven when we left, but now it is dry and ruined. These wineskins were brand new when we filled them, but look how cracked they are. And our clothes and sandals are shredded from the endless road. The leaders of Israel examined their dry rations, but failed to seek divine counsel, trusting appearances. Joshua granted them a covenant of peace to spare their lives, a promise ratified by the nation's leaders. Only 3 days later, the truth emerged. The Gibeonites were actually local neighbors living right in their midst. The army marched and reached their settlements on the 3rd day. Cities named Gibeon, Kephirah, Beroth, and Kiriath Jearim. Yet the soldiers held their weapons, bound by the solemn oath their leaders had sworn before the God of Israel. The people grumbled loudly against their leaders, but the elders replied, "We swore an oath before the Lord. We cannot harm them now without bringing divine wrath upon ourselves. We must let them live to keep our promise." The leaders continued, "They shall survive, but only as woodcutters and water carriers for our entire community." And so the promise was strictly kept. Joshua confronted the Gibeonites, demanding, "Why did you deceive us, claiming to be from afar when you live right here? You are now cursed. For generations you will be bound to chop wood and carry water for the house of my God." They replied, "We knew your God had commanded Moses to hand you this entire land and destroy all of its inhabitants. We did this out of sheer terror for our lives. Now our fate rests in your hands. Do with us as you see fit." Thus Joshua shielded them from the vengeful swords of the Israelites, consigning them to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the people and for the altar of the Lord, a role they still hold to this day. When Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Ai lay in ruins, he faced the terrifying truth of his own inevitable transformation. The ashes of Jericho still smoldered when Gibeon surrendered. What happens when your illusions of security shatter and you must choose peace over pride? Terror gripped the surrounding rulers. Gibeon was no weak outpost. It was a fortress of warriors. If they fell, who could possibly stand? In his panic, the king of Jerusalem sent a desperate summons to the lords of Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Debir to unite. "Join me," he pleaded. "We must crush Gibeon for betraying us and making peace with this foreign power." And so 5 kings forged a desperate alliance, combining their armies to crush the traitors. Their legions encircled the city walls. In terror, Gibeon sent a desperate plea to Joshua at his camp. "Do not abandon your allies," they pleaded. "March tonight and save us from the combined fury of the mountain kings." Joshua did not hesitate. He set out from Gilgal with his elite vanguard under the cover of darkness. Then a quiet voice cut through his anxiety. "Do not fear them. They are already defeated in the spiritual realm. Not one will survive." Pushing through the night, Joshua caught them off guard. An unnatural, blinding panic seized the enemy camp. The rout was total. The Israelites chased the broken army down the steep mountain passes of Beth Horon, striking them down all the way to Azekah. As the shattered armies fled down the slopes of Beth Horon, the heavens themselves erupted, raining massive hailstones down on the retreating forces. In the end, the elements claimed more lives than the edge of the sword. Standing before his weary army on that fateful day, Joshua did something unthinkable. He commanded the cosmos. "Sun, stand still over Gibeon," he cried. "Moon, halt over Aijalon." And the sun froze in place. Time itself bent to human will, hanging suspended until the victory was fully secured. For an entire day, the sun refused to set. It remains a moment unique in human history, a mysterious alignment where the divine paused the cosmos to answer a mortal voice. The battle was won by unseen forces. With the day secured, the army marched back to camp, but the 5 kings had fled, seeking refuge in the dark belly of a cave. Word of their hiding place soon reached Joshua. "Roll massive rocks over the entrance," Joshua commanded. "Guard them, but do not stop. The real work is not yet finished. Pursue the survivors. Strike them before they can recover. Prevent them from reaching their fortified cities. The source of your fear has been delivered to you." And so they utterly destroyed them. Only a handful found safety behind high walls. The victorious soldiers returned to Joshua, weary but unharmed. A heavy silence fell over the land. Then Joshua gave the order, "Open the tomb and bring those 5 kings to me." They dragged out the rulers of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. With the captive kings assembled, Joshua summoned his entire army to bear witness. He looked at his commanders. "Step forward," he said, "and place your feet upon the necks of these rulers." And they did so, asserting their dominion. "Never succumb to fear or doubt," Joshua declared. "This is the fate of every shadow that tries to block your path to freedom." He executed them on the spot, hanging their bodies from 5 trees as a stark warning until the sun began to set. At twilight, their bodies were cut down and cast back into the very cave where they had tried to hide. The cave was sealed once more with heavy boulders, a permanent monument to their defeated fears. The momentum did not stop. That very day, another hostile stronghold fell, its power utterly broken. Every single trace of the old order was dismantled. Leaving those smoking ruins behind, Joshua led his forces onward to Libnah, launching an immediate and fierce assault. The city crumbled rapidly, and its ruler met the exact same fate as the others. With Libnah neutralized, the spiritual campaign swept forward without pause. From those smoking ruins, they marched directly toward the next great hurdle, the fortress of Lachish. They quickly surrounded the stronghold. By the second day, the formidable defenses of Lachish collapsed. They cleared the city completely. When a neighboring king rushed in with desperate reinforcements, Joshua met him head-on, crushing his entire army. The threat was neutralized. The unstoppable force then turned its attention to the gates of Eglon. The siege was brief. Eglon fell within hours, its defenses shattered and swept away like dust in the wind. Next, the campaign marched into the steep highlands targeting the ancient city of Hebron. They conquered the highland fortress and all its surrounding towns, dismantling every layer of local opposition, refusing to leave any trace of the old regime. Finally, the unstoppable army wheeled around, focusing their collective might on the final fortified stronghold of Debir. They seized the city, dismantled its leadership, and swept clean the surrounding countryside, completing the total transformation. From the high mountains to the barren Negev desert, the entire southern territory was claimed. Not a single adversary remained. This swift total conquest succeeded because they fought with a higher purpose, proving that when we align with truth, the universe fights beside us. What if Joshua's campaign from Kadesh to Gaza is actually a map of your soul? Joshua seized these kings and lands all at once, powered by a divine force fighting for his victory. They retreated back to the camp at Gilgal, but as news spread, Jabin, the desperate ruler of Hazor, mobilized. He summoned the dark rulers of Madon, Shimron, and Akshav to unite. His urgent summons swept through northern peaks, dusty valleys, and western hills near the coast, calling upon the Canaanites of both the far east and the west to unite. Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites came down from their rugged mountain strongholds. Even the Hivites gathered from the shadows of Mount Hermon in Mizpah. A massive coalition descended upon them, a terrifying army as countless as the grains of sand on the seashore, complete with a formidable force of war horses and iron chariots. They pooled their strength and set up camp at the waters of Merom, ready to crush Israel. Yet the voice of faith whispered, "Do not fear them. By this time tomorrow they will lie defeated before you. You must disable their war horses and burn their chariots." So Joshua launched a sudden, terrifying ambush at the waters of Merom. The divine force delivered them into Israel's hands. They pursued the retreating forces all the way to Greater Sidon, Misrephoth-Maim, and the eastern valleys, leaving not a single survivor as Joshua obeyed his divine calling. He disabled their war horses and burned their chariots before turning back to conquer the fortress of Hazor. He executed its king, the leader of this entire pagan alliance, and wiped out every living soul within the city walls. They reduced Hazor to ashes as Joshua seized every surrounding city and king. He executed them all just as Moses had directed. Yet Israel spared the other fortified hilltop cities, burning only the ruins of Hazor. They claimed the livestock and riches of these fallen cities as their own spoils. But they left no living soul behind carrying out the sacred instructions given to Moses. He left nothing undone of what had been passed down from Moses, successfully capturing the entire region, including the massive hill country, as well as the southern deserts, the plains of Goshen, the western foothills, and the sweeping valleys of Israel. Their territory stretched from Mount Halak in the south to Baal Gad in the shadow of Mount Hermon. He hunted down and defeated every single king, enduring a long and brutal war to claim the land. Only the Hivites of Gibeon sought peace. Every other city chose to fight and fell in battle. Their hearts were hardened by pride, driving them to fight and face absolute inevitable destruction. They received no mercy, wiped out completely in accordance with the ancient decrees. Joshua then turned his attention to the legendary giant Anakites, purging them completely from the highlands of Hebron, Debir, and Anam. He erased their cities completely, leaving no trace of these giant fears within their boundaries. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did any giants remain, as Joshua claimed the entire territory promised to Moses. He divided this sacred heritage among the tribes, finding peace at last. These are the powerful external kings they had to defeat, conquering their territories east of the Jordan River, from the Arnon Valley to Mount Hermon, along with the eastern Jordan Valley. This included the vast kingdom once ruled by King Sihon of the Amorites. His rule stretched from Aroer on the edge of the Arnon Valley, sweeping through the middle of the gorge and half of Gilead, straight to the Jabbok River. He also commanded the eastern Jordan Rift, from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea and the slopes of Mount Pisgah. They also conquered King Og of Bashan, one of the last terrifying giants of Rephaim, ruling from Ashtaroth. His vast domain covered Mount Hermon, Seleka, and Bashan, extending to the borders of the Geshurites and Maccathites, and half of Gilead reaching the territory of King Sihon. Moses, the servant of God, defeated these eastern kings, dividing their lands among the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Next came the rulers west of the Jordan. These are the kings defeated by Joshua west of the Jordan, spanning from Baal Gad in Lebanon all the way to Mount Halak near Seir. Joshua portioned out this territory to the remaining tribes of Israel as their sacred, lasting heritage. This vast spiritual inheritance spans our highest peaks, lowest valleys, rugged slopes, and the dry, barren wilderness of our souls. We reclaim territories once ruled by Hittites and Canaanites, bringing down the proud walls of Jericho and the ruins of Ai. We must defeat our own inner rulers, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, and the ancient fortress of Lachish. We conquer the kings of Eglon, Gaza, Debir, Geter, Hormah, and Arad, each representing a silent fear we must face to find true spiritual liberation today. Why does this ancient list of fallen kings from Libnah to Bethel feel like a map of our own conquered fears? The rulers of Tappuah, Hepher, and Aphek, the lords of Lasharon, Madan, and Hazor. Every name a fortress of ego we must tear down. From Shimron to the mystic heights of Akshaf, from Tanakh to the blood-soaked fields of Megiddo. All fallen. The king of Kadesh Jokneam in Carmel, and the ruler of Dor clinging to their fading ancient strongholds. Goyim in Gilgal and Tirzah, 31 kings broken in the dirt. Yet the great leader Joshua was now growing old. The divine voice whispered to his soul, "You are old. Yet so much of your internal territory remains wild and unconquered. Look at the untamed borders of the Philistines and Geshurites stretching from the eastern river of Egypt to Ekron in the north. This is Canaanite country. The 5 warlords of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, with the Avites lurking to the south. All the Canaanite wildlands from the caves of Sidon to Aphek, reaching the edge of the fierce Amorite borders. The land of Gebal, the eastern slopes of Lebanon from Baal Gad under Mount Hermon, all the way to Lebo Hamath, every tribe in the hills from Lebanon to Misrephoth Maim, and all the people of Sidon. I will drive these shadows out before you. Now divide this unmapped frontier as a sacred destiny, just as I have commanded. Apportion this inheritance among the 9 tribes and the remaining half-tribe of Manasseh. The other half, along with Reuben and Gad, had already taken their portion east of the Jordan claimed under Moses, the servant of the Lord. Their boundary ran from Aroer on the lip of the Arnon Gorge, through the city, nested deep in the ravine, and across the high plains of Medeba to Dibon, taking all the cities of the Amorite king Sihon of Heshbon. They held Gilead along with Geshur and Makkah, all of Mount Hermon, and all Bashan, to Saleka, the vast kingdom of Og, who ruled from Ashtaroth and Edrei. He was the last survivor of the giant Rephaim. Moses crushed them, yet the people of Israel failed to drive out the Geshurites. They dwell among them still, a constant, nagging compromise. But to the priestly tribe of Levi, Moses gave no earthly land. The burning offerings consumed by fire for the Lord were their portion, just as the divine had promised. Moses apportioned to the tribe of Reuben their sacred share, family by family. Their land reached from Aroer at the steep edge of the Arnon Gorge, through the valley settlement spanning the entire plateau of Medeba and its surrounding towns, Dibon Bamoth Baal, Beth Baal Meon, Jahaz Kedemoth, and also Mephath, Kiriathaim Sibma, and Zereth Shahar on the valley hills, along with Beth Peor, the slopes of Pisgah, and Beth Jeshemoth. Every town on the high plain, the whole kingdom of Sihon, that Amorite ruler who once held power in Heshbon. Moses broke his power, slaying the Midianite chiefs Evi, Rechem, Zur-Hur, and Reba, vassals who ruled the land for Sihon. In the slaughter they also put Balaam son of Beor, the dark mystic, who traded in curses to the sword. The great Jordan River marked the western boundary of Reuben's legacy. Their allocated cities, their fields, and their quiet villages. Moses also granted the tribe of Gad their share, divided among their ancient clans. Their borders claimed Jazer, the fortress towns of Gilead, and half the Ammonite territory up to Aroer near Rabbah, spanning from Heshbon to the heights of Ramoth Mizpah, and from Mahanaim to the border of Debir, including Beth Haram Sukkoth, and the remaining territories of the fallen king. The Jordan River served as their natural western boundary, reaching up to the tip of the Sea of Galilee. This was the ancestral allotment for Gad, with all its towns and outposts. Moses designated a territory for the half-tribe of Manasseh, assigned according to their ancestral clans. Their land began at Mahanaim, sweeping across the whole of Bashan, the ancient kingdom of Og, and all the settlements of Jair, 60 fortified towns in total. Half of Gilead, along with Ashtaroth and Edrei, the crown cities of the legendary giant Og, went directly to the clans of Machir, son of Manasseh. Spoken by clan, these were the territories Moses laid out while camped on the plains of Moab, looking across the Jordan toward Jericho. Yet to the tribe of Levi, Moses left no physical land. The Lord himself, the Creator, was their soul's only true inheritance, exactly as promised. Now comes the sacred division of the lands west of the Jordan, the true heart of Canaan. Eleazar the priest and Joshua decided their fate by casting sacred lots, a quiet divine lottery for the remaining 9.5 tribes, obeying what the Lord had once commanded through Moses. Moses had settled the 2.5 tribes east of the Jordan, leaving the Levites without a single acre of claim. Joseph's line became Manasseh and Ephraim, a mirror to our own divided souls. Why were the sacred Levites denied physical land, left with only scattered cities for survival? They carved up the ancient wilderness by divine order, but one warrior demanded his forgotten promise. At the camp of Gilgal, the tribe of Judah approached Joshua. There, Caleb stepped forward, recalling a sacred promise whispered in the desolate sands of Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses sent me into the shadows to spy on this land. My companions returned, paralyzed by fear spreading terror through the camp. But I stood firm, holding fast to my deep inner convictions and following my God wholeheartedly. Because of that, Moses bound us with an oath. He swore the very ground my feet touched would belong to my descendants forever, a reward for absolute unwavering devotion. Now look, for 45 long years while our people drifted through the barren sands of this wilderness, the Creator kept his promise and preserved my life. So here I stand today, 85 years old. My body is unbroken. I possess the same fierce strength and battle-ready vigor today as the morning Moses first sent me out. Give me the rugged hill country promised to me. We both know the giant Anakites dwell there inside massive, heavily fortified cities. With divine strength, I will drive them from their strongholds. Sensing his fierce resolve, Joshua blessed Caleb and granted him the ancient city of Hebron. To this day, Hebron belongs to Caleb's bloodline, a monument to a man who followed his Creator with an undivided heart. Long ago, this place was Kiriath Arba, named for the most formidable giant to ever walk these valleys. At last, the bleeding soil found peace. The sacred boundary of Judah stretched into the scorching southern Badlands, running alongside the jagged borders of Edom and the vast wilderness of Zin. This southern line began at the dark, salty waters of the Dead Sea. It wound past Scorpion Pass, cut through Zin, climbed past Kadesh Barnea and Hezron, before finally veering toward Karka. From there it followed the Brook of Egypt, tracing the dust until it met the endless Mediterranean Sea. That marked their southern edge, while the eastern boundary followed the Dead Sea up to the mouth of the Jordan River. Their northern boundary carved its path from the bay where the Jordan River feeds the salty deep, ascending toward Beth Hogla, sweeping past Beth Arabah to the ancient stone of Bohan. It climbed higher, leaving the troubled valley of Achor behind as it headed toward Debir. It then bent north toward Gilgal, facing the steep red pass of Adumim. It pressed on to the springs of En Shemesh, emerging finally at En Rogel. From there it climbed through the notorious Valley of Hinnom, tracing the southern slopes of the Jebusite stronghold of Jerusalem, before reaching the high western ridge overlooking the Valley of Rephaim. From that windy summit, the line curved downward toward the flowing springs of Nephtoah, threading through the mountain cities of Ephron, before descending toward Bala, also known as Kiriath Jearim. It swept west from Bala to Mount Seir, skirted the rugged northern slopes of Mount Jearim, descended steeply into Beth Shemesh, and crossed over to Timnah. It marched along the northern slopes of Ekron, turned toward Shikkeron, passed Mount Bala, and reached Jabneel, finally meeting its end at the ocean. The mighty Mediterranean formed their western boundary. These were the sacred limits of the land allotted to the clans of Judah. Obeying the divine command, Joshua granted Caleb his promised share in Judah, the stronghold of Kiriath Arba, which we call Hebron. Arba was the forefather of the giants, but Caleb fearlessly drove out his 3 fierce sons, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. Not stopping there, Caleb marched his warriors against Debir, an ancient city once known as Kiriath Sefer. He issued a challenge: "I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to whoever can conquer and tame Kiriath Sefer." Othniel, Caleb's own nephew, took up the challenge and captured it, winning the hand of Aksa in marriage. On her wedding day, she urged her husband to ask for fertile land. Sliding down from her donkey, her father Caleb asked, "What do you need?" She answered, "Give me a blessing. Since you have sent me to the dry Negev desert, give me springs of life-giving water, too." So Caleb granted her both the upper and lower springs. This is the sacred inheritance of the clans of Judah. In the far south bordering Edom lay the ancient towns of Kabzeel, Eder, Jagur, Kenna, Dimona, Adada, and Kadesh. And then came Hazor Ithnan Ziph Telem Bealoth, Hazor Hadada, Kiriath, Hezron, Amam, Shema Molada, and Hazar Gada, followed by Heshmon Bet Peled Hazar Shual Beersheba, Biziothia Bala Iim, Ezem El Tolad, Chesil, Hormah, Ziklag, and Magmanah, Sansana Lebeoth, Shilhim Ain, and Ramon. In total, 29 towns stood tall within the western foothills: Eshtal, Zorah, Ashna, Zanoah, En, Ganim, Tapua, Enam, Jarmuth, Adullam, Soko, Azekah, Sharaim, Adithaim, Gedera, and Gederothaim. 14 towns: Zanan Hadashah, Migdal, Gad Delan, Mitzpah, Joktheel, Lachish, Bozkath, Eglon, Kabon, Lamas, Kithlish Gederoth, Beth Dagon, Nama, and Makkedah. 16 towns, along with Libnah, Ether, Ashan, Iftah, Ashna, Nazib, Keilah, Akzib, and Marashah. 9 towns and Ekron. Like these maps, your own boundaries are waiting to be claimed. What if these ancient boundaries from Ekron to Ashdod are actually mapping the hidden territory of our own minds? Gaza and its settlements stretching down to the cold brook of Egypt and the endless sea. Deep in the highlands lay 11 hidden settlements. Names like Shamir Jatir and Gilo, forgotten, markers on an ancient stony trail. 9 more strongholds from Duma to ancient Hebron, carving out a home amidst wild, unpredictable valleys. 10 outposts, including Carmel and Timnah, stood as physical boundaries protecting their fragile emerging identity. 6 highland towns, then 2 more like Kiriath-Jearim sentinels watching over a land that mirrored their internal struggles. Out in the desolate wasteland lay the city of salt and the oasis of En-Gedi, 6 silent towns. Yet the tribe of Judah could never truly conquer the stubborn Jebusites in Jerusalem, so they coexisted in unresolved tension. Meanwhile, the sons of Joseph received their sacred inheritance, starting where the Jordan flows past Jericho. Their boundary climbed straight through the desert into the cold hills of Bethel. Leaving Bethel, the path wound onward toward the ancient territory of the Archites. From there it cut west through the valleys descending toward the Great Sea, the final echoing edge of their world. This was the birthright of Joseph's descendants. Ephraim's border ran from the eastern hills of Ataroth all the way to upper Beth-horon. From that height, it reached the sea. On the north, the line twisted past the sacred sanctuary of Shiloh, descended through the lonely slopes of Genoa and Nara, touched Jericho, and ended at the Jordan River. Heading west from Tappuah, the boundary followed the Kanah ravine straight to the sea. This was Ephraim's sacred inheritance, though some of their towns lay scattered inside the neighboring borders of Manasseh. But Ephraim harbored a critical flaw: they failed to drive out the Canaanites of Gezer. These old rivals remained, serving as forced laborers, a dangerous spiritual compromise. Meanwhile, land was also allotted to Manasseh, the firstborn son of Joseph. His eldest son, Machir, the father of Gilead, was a fierce and decorated warrior. Having already claimed the wild lands of Gilead and Bashan, east of the river, territory was now divided for the remaining clans of Manasseh. The clans of Abiezer-Helek and Shechem, the male heirs of Joseph's lineage, each receiving their designated portion. But Zelophehad had no sons, only 5 daughters, whose names echoed with a rare and quiet defiance. These women bravely approached Eleazar, the priest Joshua, and the tribal leaders. They declared that the Lord had commanded Moses to give them an inheritance. Joshua listened and gave them land just as the divine had instructed. This meant 10 additional portions fell to Manasseh beyond their territories already secured east of the Jordan, because these daughters claimed their heritage alongside the sons, while the remaining clans settled in the wild country of Gilead. Manasseh's frontier stretched from Asher to Mishmethath near Shechem before turning south toward the spring of En-Tappuah. Though Manasseh controlled the surrounding region, the border city of Tappuah actually belonged to Ephraim. The boundary then dropped south to the Kanah ravine, leaving several of Ephraim's cities isolated deep within Manasseh's own borders. Manasseh's true border tracked the northern bank of the ravine, terminating at the Great Western Sea. Ephraim lay to the south, Manasseh to the north, with the vast ocean serving as their shared western boundary. They bordered Asher on the north and Issachar on the east, holding key fortress towns within their neighbors' territories. Cities like Beth-shean, Endor, and Megiddo, each surrounded by vulnerable farming settlements. Yet the warriors of Manasseh failed to capture these strongholds. The Canaanites stubbornly held their ground. Even when Israel grew powerful, they merely enslaved their enemies instead of driving them out. A fateful error. Eventually, the house of Joseph complained to Joshua, asking why they received only a single portion of land. "We are a massive population," they argued, "highly blessed by God." Joshua challenged them in return. "If you are so numerous," he told them, "climb into the forests of the giants and clear it yourselves. If the hills of Ephraim are too narrow, take the high woods." But they whimpered that even the mountains were not enough. They cried out that the lowlanders possessed terrifying iron chariots from the fortress of Beth-shean to the Jezreel Valley. Joshua turned to the trembling tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, saying that because of their great power, they deserved more. The mountain forest would belong to them. Though it is a dark forest, you must clear it. You will conquer your deepest fears, driving out the enemy and their formidable iron chariots. At last, they gathered at Shiloh, raising the sacred tent, finding a center amidst their internal battles. Why do we hesitate when the promise is within reach? The land was won, yet 7 tribes still held nothing. Joshua challenged their hesitation. How long would they wait to occupy the sacred ground their ancient God had offered? "Select 3 men from each tribe," he commanded. "I will send them to chart the terrain, writing down a detailed map of 7 equal portions. Only then would they return, ready to carve their future into 7 distinct domains." Judah would guard the southern borders, while the house of Joseph held the high forests of the north. "Once you have charted these 7 territories, bring the written records here to me. I will cast sacred lots for you right here in the presence of our God. But the priestly Levites claim no physical soil. Their inheritance is serving the divine. The tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh had already taken their portions east of the Jordan under Moses. And so the chosen explorers prepared to march. Joshua sent them off with a clear charge: walk the earth and record its secrets. Return here to Shiloh, where I will cast lots before God. The explorers departed, traveling the length of the country, recording every town and dividing the vast expanse into 7 regions. At last, they returned to Joshua at the camp in Shiloh. There Joshua cast the sacred stones before God. He divided the inheritance, matching each piece of earth to its destined family. The first lot drawn fell to the small tribe of Benjamin. Their family boundaries were placed right between Judah and Joseph. Starting from the east, their northern border ran from the Jordan River up the rugged slopes of Jericho. It climbed westward through the dark hill country, ending in the barren wilderness of Beth-aven. The line turned south toward Luz, known as Bethel, descending to Ataroth Adar on the slopes south of Lower Beth Horon. From the hills near Beth Horon, the boundary swept southward along the western edge, ending at Kiriath Baal, the Judean town also called Kiriath Jearim. This formed their western boundary. The southern border began at the edge of Kiriath Jearim, running toward the fresh springs of Nephtoah. It descended to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Ben Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim, before winding down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slopes of Jerusalem. It dropped to En Rohel, then curved northward to En Shemesh, heading toward the stone circles of Geliloth near the Adumim Pass. It ran down to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben, passed north along the slope of Beth Arabah, and descended into the dusty plains. The line reached the northern slopes of Beth Hogla, ending at the northern bay of the Dead Sea where the Jordan River empties. This was their southern limit, while the flowing Jordan River guarded the east. These were the borders of Benjamin. Within this rugged territory, the settlements assigned to their clans included the famous desert city of Jericho, Beth Hogla, Emek Keziz, Beth Arabah Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Oprah, Kephar Ammoni, Ophni, and Geba. 12 towns with their surrounding villages, along with Gibeon, Ramah, Beroth, Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rechem, Irpeel, Tarala, Zelah, Heleph, Jebus, Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kiriath. 14 towns with their settlements. This was the ancestral inheritance assigned to the clans of Benjamin. The second lot drawn fell to the tribe of Simeon, whose family land lay nestled deep within the borders of Judah. Their inheritance included Beersheba, Sheba Molada, Hazar Shual, and Bala, Ezem Eltolad, Bethul Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Markaboth, Hazar Susa, Beth Lebaoth, and Sharuhen. 13 towns with their villages, Ain Rimmon, Ether, and Ashan. 4 towns with their surrounding hamlets, extending as far as Baalath Beer in the southern Negev wilderness. This was the sacred boundary line of the tribe of Simeon. Simeon's territory was carved out of Judah's share because Judah had more than enough. Thus their home rested inside another's land. Next came Zebulun. The third lot chosen for their clans stretched out across the north, reaching as far as the boundary of Sarid. Their boundary ran west toward Maralah, touching Dabbasheth, until it met the gorge near Jokneam. From Sarid it turned east toward the sunrise, passing Chisloth Tabor down to Dabarath and ascending toward Japhia. It kept heading east to Gath Hefer and Ephkazon, reaching Rimmon, and curving toward Nia before turning north to Hanathon, ending in the valley of Iphthah El. It held Katath, Nahalal, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem. 12 towns with all their surrounding settlements. These towns and villages were the inheritance for Zebulun. Next came the portion of Issachar. The fourth sacred lot fell to the families of Issachar. Their territory spanned Jezreel, Jesuloth, Shunem, Hapharaim, Shion, Anaharath, Rabbith, Kishion, Ebez, Remeth, Enganim, Enhada, and Beth-Paz. Their boundary reached Tabor Shahazuma and Beth Shemesh, ending at the Jordan River. 16 towns with their villages. The fifth lot fell to the tribe of Asher. For their clans, the land was mapped out to include Helkath Hali-Betin, Akshaph, and Alamelech, Amad Mishal Carmel, and Shihor Libnath borders, defined just like our inner lives. Then the border turned east to Beth Dagon, touching Zebulun, and the valley of Ifta-El, heading north to Beth Emek and Neill, passing Kabul on the left. It reached to Abdon Rahab Haman and Cana, stretching as far as Greater Sidon. Then the boundary turned back toward Ramah, and the stronghold of Tyre bent toward Hosa, and ended at the sea near Aksib, Umma, Afek, and Rehob. 22 towns with their villages. These territories were the sacred inheritance of Asher. Then came Naphtali. The sixth sacred lot fell to the clan of Naphtali. For their families, the boundary ran from Heleph and the great oak in Zananim, past Adami Nekeb and Jabneel, to Lakum, ending at the Jordan River. The border swept west to Asnath. Tabor reached Hukkok and met Zebulun on the south, Asher on the west, and the Jordan on the east. Their fortified cities were Ziddim, Zerhamath, Rakath, Kinnereth, Adamah, Ramah, Hazor, and Kadesh. Edrei, and Hazor, Iron, Migdal, El Horem, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh. 19 cities with their villages. These towns and villages were the heritage of the tribe of Naphtali. The seventh lot fell to the tribe of Dan, assigned family by family. Their territory included Zorah Eshtaol, Ir Shemesh Shalabin, Ajalon, Ithla, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, Eltekeh, and Gibbethon. Baalath Yehud, Bene Barak, Gath Rimmon, Me Yarkon, and Rakon facing Joppa. But the Danites struggled hard to hold their own territory, so they attacked. Leshem captured it, put its people to the sword, took possession, and settled down there, calling the city Dan after their founding ancestor. These lands were the inheritance of Dan. Finally, the land was given to Joshua. Once the division of the land was complete, the children of Israel gave Joshua, son of Nun, his own inheritance. By the Lord's command, they gave him the town he requested, Timnath-Serah, in the hills of Ephraim, where he rebuilt the city and stayed. These were the territories assigned by Eleazar the priest, Joshua, son of Nun, and the ancestral leaders of the tribes of Israel. They distributed the land by casting sacred lots in the presence of the Lord at the doorway of the tabernacle in Shiloh. With the division complete, the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "Command the people of Israel to designate the cities of refuge I spoke of through Moses. Anyone who takes a life unintentionally, by accident, may flee to these sanctuaries. These places will serve as a shield against the relative seeking blood revenge. When a fugitive reaches one of these gates, they must stand before the elders of that city and lay out their case. The elders shall welcome them inside, granting them a safe place to dwell among the citizens. If the avenger of blood pursues them, the elders must protect them and not surrender the slayer. For the death was an accident, done without any prior malice or hatred. The accused must remain in that city until they stand trial before the congregation, and until the death of the serving high priest. Only then may they safely return to their own home and the town they fled. And so they consecrated these sanctuaries: Kadesh in Galilee in the hills of Naphtali, Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and Hebron, also known as Kiriath Arba, in the hill country of Judah. On the east side of the Jordan across from Jericho, they chose Bezer on the wilderness plateau from the tribe of Reuben, Ramoth in Gilead from the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan from the half-tribe of Manasseh. These sanctuaries protected both native Israelites and the foreigners dwelling in their midst, so that any slayer who killed unintentionally might escape to one of them. Thus they would not die by the avenger's hand before standing trial in the presence of the assembly. Then the leaders of the Levites came forward to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the tribal heads of Israel at Shiloh in Canaan, saying, "The Lord ordered through Moses that we be given cities to dwell in, along with pasture lands for our livestock." So obeying the Lord's decree, the Israelites surrendered towns and grazing lands from their own inheritance to the Levites. The first boundary lot fell to the Kohathite clans. The priestly descendants of Aaron received 13 towns from the territories of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. The remaining Kohathites were given 10 cities from the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. The Gershonites received 13 towns from the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan. The Merarites received 12 towns from Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. So the children of Israel assigned these cities and pasture lands to the Levites, just as the Lord commanded through Moses. These were the cities given to the priestly descendants of Aaron from Judah and Simeon. These are the towns they assigned. These belonged to the descendants of Aaron who were from the Kohathite clans of the Levites. They gave them Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, with its pasture lands. Arba was the forefather of Anak, but the surrounding fields and open country were given to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his personal possession. So to the descendants of Aaron the priest, they gave Hebron a safe sanctuary for anyone who killed someone accidentally. Why did they map out Libnah, Jatir, Eshtemoa, Holon, Debir, Ain, Jutah, and Beth Shemesh, 9 sanctuary towns from these tribes? And from Benjamin's borders, why choose Gibeon, Geba, Anathoth, and Almon? What spiritual blueprint lay within these 13 priestly cities and their surrounding lands? These allocations for the Kohathite clans were not random plots, but boundaries drawn from the rugged heart of Ephraim. Shechem, a towering city of refuge, alongside Gezer, Kibzaim, and Beth Horon. 4 sanctuaries for the wandering, fearful soul. From the territory of Dan, they carved out Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Aijalon, and Gath Rimmon, 4 places of peace. Out of half Manasseh came Tanakh and Gath Rimmon, 2 more designated cities of hope. 10 key cities of refuge in total. Next, the Gershonites claimed Golan and Bashan, a safe haven for the isolated soul, and Bishterah securing 2 vital strongholds of peace. Issachar contributed the ancient stronghold of Kishion, along with Dabarath Jarmuth and En Ganim. Asher surrendered 4 more, Mishal, Abdon, Helkath, and Rehob. From Naphtali came Kadesh in Galilee, another sacred city of refuge alongside Hamath Dor and Kartan. In total, 13 secure towns fell to the Gershonites. Next, they charted the lands for the Merarites. From Zebulun, they took Yokneam, Karta, Dimnah, and Nahalal. From Reuben's desert plains, they received Bezer, Jahaz, Kedemoth, and Mephath, 4 more sanctuaries. From the wild hills of Gad, they claimed Ramoth and Gilead, a crucial shelter. Mahanaim, Heshbon, and Jazer completed the list. Altogether, the Merarites held 12 towns of peace. In all, 48 sanctuary towns were woven across Israel, each surrounded by its own green pastures. The ancient promise was finally realized. The Lord delivered the entire land to Israel, and they claimed their hard-won inheritance, settling in peace. Quietness settled over the land on every side, exactly as God had sworn to their forefathers. Not a single enemy could withstand their charge. Every hostile force fell before them. Not one of God's redemptive promises fell to the ground. Every single word came to pass. In this moment of triumph, Joshua summoned Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. He said, "You have kept your word to Moses, the Lord's servant, and you have obeyed my voice throughout this entire campaign. Through all these long years, you never abandoned your brothers. You guarded the sacred command of your God. Now that the Lord has granted rest to your kinsmen as he swore, you may return home at last to the lands Moses granted you east of the Jordan. But carry the holy law deep within you. Love the Lord, walk in his paths, hold fast to his truth, and serve him with your entire soul." With Joshua's blessing, they departed. To one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given the high country of Bashan. Joshua assigned the other half territory to the west, sending them off with a final, solemn blessing. He told them, "Return to your tents with immense riches, herds of cattle, silver, gold, and iron, and garments in abundance, and share the spoils of war with those who stayed behind." Thus, the eastern tribes broke camp at Shiloh, leaving their brothers behind in the land of Canaan, journeying back to the rugged valleys of Gilead, their destined home under the ancient law. But reaching the banks of the Jordan, they built a massive towering altar overlooking the rushing water. Rumors traveled fast. The western tribes whispered in shock, "Look at what Reuben and Gad have done." And half Manasseh. "They have erected a rival altar right on our border." Fear and fury ignited, and the entire assembly gathered at Shiloh, ready for a bloody civil war. Before striking, they sent Phinehas the priest to Gilead to confront the eastern tribes, accompanied by 10 high-ranking chieftains, each a head of an ancestral family from the western tribes. Upon arrival, they demanded, "How can you betray the Lord like this? Why build a rival altar to rebel against him? Have you forgotten the dark betrayal at Peor?" We still bear the spiritual scars of that plague today, yet you turn away again. If you rebel today, His wrath will fall on the entire community tomorrow. If your territory feels spiritually cut off, cross back over to the land where His tabernacle rests. Do not invite ruin by erecting a secondary altar. Remember how Achan took what was forbidden and cursed us all, bringing judgment on the whole nation. He did not die alone in his guilt. Then came their defense. The eastern tribes responded, "The mighty one God, the Lord Himself. He knows our hearts and our true intent." If this stone structure was built to reject Him or offer forbidden sacrifices, let the Lord judge us today. We built it out of a deeper fear, the terror of being forgotten, of losing our place in the sacred story. What if the borders we build to protect ourselves actually lock us in exile? They feared future generations would say, "The Jordan River separates us from God. You have no place with God." So we resolved to build an altar not for blood sacrifices, but to serve as a psychological anchor for future generations, proving we too worship the divine. That way your children cannot shut us out. If they try, we can point to this replica altar our ancestors built as a sign of our shared faith. It was never meant for sacrifice, but only to stand as a witness. We had no desire to rebel against God or turn away from His path. We would never build a rival altar, for the only true sanctuary is at His holy tabernacle. Hearing this, Phinehas and the elders were relieved. He declared, "Today we know God is here, because you have not broken faith with Him. By staying faithful, you spared the nation from divine judgment." The leaders then journeyed back to Canaan to deliver the peaceful news. The people rejoiced, praising God, and immediately abandoned all plans for a devastating civil war. They named this monument Witness, a reminder to their fragile hearts that the divine remains their true center. Many years passed in peace, and the land found rest. An aging Joshua, sensing his time was short, summoned all the leaders, judges, and elders of Israel. He addressed them, saying, "My days are nearly over. You yourselves have witnessed what the Lord did to those who stood against you. It was your God who fought your battles, and I have divided this conquered territory among your tribes as a lasting inheritance." This land stretches from the Jordan River all the way west to the Great Sea, including both defeated territories and lands yet to be taken. The Lord your God will clear them from your path. You will claim their soil just as He promised. Stand firm and carefully follow every word written in the sacred laws of Moses. Never stray from this path. Do not blend in with the local populations, and never speak the names of their foreign gods. Do not bow before them or serve them. Instead, cling tightly to the Lord, just as you have done up to this very day. He has swept aside mighty empires to make room for you, and to this day, no enemy has managed to withstand your force. A single one of you can put 1,000 to flight because your Creator fights your battles. So guard your hearts and love Him always. But if you turn back, joining hands with the remnants of these pagan nations, if you intermarry and assimilate, understand this clearly. The Lord will stop clearing them away. Instead, they will become a dangerous trap and a blinding snare for you. They will act as whips on your backs and thorns in your eyes, slowly destroying you from the fertile peace you were granted. I am now going the way of all the earth. Deep in your souls, you know that not a single promise from God has fallen short. Every single word has been fulfilled. But just as His blessings came to pass, His judgment will surely fall if you betray His holy covenant. He will wipe you out from this fertile soil. If you break faith with your Creator to worship other deities, His anger will burn, and you will quickly vanish from the very land He promised you. Joshua gathered the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, and judges to stand in the presence of God. Then Joshua addressed the crowd, delivering the words of the Lord. The God of Israel says, long ago your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived far away. They dwelt beyond the great Euphrates River, serving foreign gods. But I guided your father Abraham out of that land and led him across Canaan. I blessed him with a vast lineage. To Abraham I gave Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I settled Esau in the rugged hills of Seir, while Jacob's family migrated down into Egypt. Later I sent Moses and Aaron striking Egypt with plagues. Eventually I rescued you. When I led your ancestors out of that oppressive land, they reached the edge of the Great Sea. The Egyptian army pursued them with chariots and horsemen, pinning them right against the Red Sea. When they cried out in terror, I placed a wall of deep darkness between you and your pursuers, then collapsed the sea over them. Your own eyes witnessed my power over Egypt. After you wandered the dry wilderness for decades, I guided you to the Amorite kingdom east of the Jordan. They marched out to fight, but I handed them over to you. I wiped them out so you could claim their homeland. Then Balak, the king of Moab, rose up to oppose you. He hired the prophet Balaam, son of Beor, to cast a curse on your people. But I refused to hear his curse. Instead, he was compelled to bless you repeatedly, and I rescued you from his grasp. Then you crossed the Jordan and reached Jericho. Its citizens fought you along with a coalition of Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, and other powerful tribes. Yet I delivered them into your hands. I sent hornets ahead of you to scatter those two mighty kings. It was not your own sword or bow that won the day. I handed you a land you never cleared and cities you never built. Today you live there, eating from vineyards and olive trees you never planted. Will you face the ultimate truth or cling to old illusions? Cast away those ancient phantoms your ancestors worshipped in exile. Devote your soul to Him alone. But if serving the Creator feels like a prison, then choose today whom you will serve. Will it be the ghosts of your past or the hollow gods of this modern world? But as for me and my house, we choose the Lord. And the people cried out, we would never abandon the divine to chase empty illusions. He is the one who pulled us and our fathers out of Egypt, rescuing our souls from the house of bondage. We watched His miracles unfold before us. He shielded us through wilderness and war, sweeping away every nation in our path, even the fierce Amorites. We choose the Lord too, for He alone is our God. But Joshua warned them, you cannot serve this God. He is holy and demands absolute devotion. If you abandon Him for foreign idols, His blessing will turn to ruin, despite everything He did for you. But the crowd protested, no, we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua declared, you are now witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. And they replied, we are indeed witnesses. He urged them to cast out the foreign gods in their midst and surrender their hearts fully to the Lord, the God of Israel. The people vowed they would serve and obey the Lord their God. On that very day, Joshua made a sacred covenant for the nation. Right there at Shechem, he established decrees and laws, writing these sacred words down in the book of the law of God. Then he rolled a massive stone and erected it beneath the oak tree close to the sanctuary of the Lord. He told them, this stone stands as a silent witness. It has heard every single word the Lord spoke to us. It will testify against you if you betray your Creator. With that, Joshua sent the people back to their ancestral lands. Sometime later, Joshua, son of Nun, the devoted servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They laid him to rest on his own allotted land at Timnath-Serah, in the rugged hills of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. The people of Israel stayed true to the Lord as long as Joshua lived, and during the lifetimes of the elders who survived him and had witnessed all his great deeds. The bones of Joseph, carried all the way from Egypt, were finally buried at Shechem, in the plot of land Jacob had purchased. This land became the lasting legacy of Joseph's family. Elaz, son of Aaron, also passed away and was buried at Gibeah, the town given to his son Phinehas, high up in the hills of Ephraim. Now look inward. After every battle, every command, every high of faith and depth of failure, what does this ancient mirror reveal to you? Which words shook your soul? What truth will you carry into your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't just study the past. Live the legacy today. Remember,